cost $20,000 just changed modern warfare forever. Not a stealth jet, not a missile system, a plywood and foam kamikaze drone built in a shed, flying 300 miles to blow up a $60 million warship. That is exactly what Iran's Shahed-136 did, and it worked. The US military watched, studied, and quietly panicked, because for every one of these drones they shoot down, they're spending $50,000. The math is broken, and the Pentagon knows it. But here's what nobody is talking about. The US didn't just sit there. They built something back. 3 somethings, actually. And one of them might finally solve the most dangerous equation in modern warfare. That $20,000 drone started a war America wasn't prepared to fight. Not a war of carriers and stealth bombers, but a war of cheap, expendable, unstoppable swarms. So what does the most powerful military on Earth do when its most sophisticated weapons can't keep up with something built on a budget? It builds smarter, faster, and cheaper. Stay with us, because what the US just deployed changes everything you thought you knew about drone warfare. Introduction: setting the stage. To understand why the US response to the Shahed-136 matters so much, you have to understand just how badly this little drone rattled the world's most powerful military. The Shahed-136, called Jiran-2 when Russia used it in Ukraine, is not impressive on paper. It has a wingspan of about 8 feet. It runs on a lawnmower-style engine. It flies at roughly 115 miles per hour. But here is what makes it terrifying. Iran can build one for somewhere between $20,000 and $50,000. Some estimates put the cost even lower. And when you send 100 of them at once, it doesn't matter if you shoot down 90. The 10 that get through still blow up power stations, military bases, and naval vessels. Russia fired over 3,000 of these drones into Ukraine between 2022 and 2024. Ukraine shot most of them down, but the cost of shooting them down was crippling. Now multiply that problem across the Pacific, across the Middle East, across every theater where the US military operate, and you start to understand why general officers in Washington weren't sleeping well at night. If you've been following this channel, you already know America doesn't back down from a challenge like this. Type proud in the comments if you agree, because what the US military engineers did next is something worth talking about. Segment 1, the asymmetry problem. Here's the number that broke the Pentagon's brain. A Patriot missile costs about $3 million per shot. A Shahed-136 costs $20,000. That means Iran can send 150 Shahed, and it would cost the same as just one Patriot intercepting a single drone. This is called cost asymmetry, and it is the defining military problem of our time. Defense officials testified before Congress in early 2024 that the US was running low on interceptor missiles in certain regions, not because the missiles weren't working, but because the sheer volume of cheap drones was draining stockpiles faster than factories could replace them. Think about that. The world's richest military, with the most advanced weapons ever built, was being outpaced by a drone with a lawnmower engine. So the question became, how do you fight a $20,000 threat without spending 50 times that much to stop it? The answer wasn't more Patriot missiles. The answer was 3 programs that almost nobody outside the defense world was talking about until now. Segment 2, the first solution. APKWS rockets. The first part of America's answer is something that already existed, but got a brand new mission. The Advanced Precision Kill Weapon System, or APKWS for short, is a laser-guided rocket originally designed to hit small ground targets. It's fired from helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft. It costs somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000 per round, depending on the contract. For years, it was used against vehicles, small boats, and troop positions. Nobody thought of it as a drone killer. Then something clicked. In 2023 and 2024, US and Allied forces began testing the APKWS against slow, low-flying drone targets, exactly the profile of the Shahed-136. The results were surprisingly effective. Here is why this matters. An APKWS costs roughly $10,000. A Shahed costs $20,000. For the first time in this conflict, the math actually works in America's favor. You're spending less to kill what the enemy spent to build. The APKWS won't solve everything. It requires an aircraft nearby to fire it. which isn't always possible, but it opened a door. It proved that going cheaper was not just possible, it was the right direction. And that door led directly to the second solution, one that the Air Force has been quietly pouring money into since 2022. Segment 3, the second solution, Coyote interceptors. The Coyote is one of the most interesting weapons the US has ever developed because it was designed specifically to fight exactly this kind of war. Built by Raytheon, the Coyote is a small, expendable drone interceptor. It launches from a ground-based tube system, flies toward incoming drone threats, and destroys them, either by direct impact or by detonating close enough to disable them. There are multiple versions. The Coyote Block 2 and Block 3 have been tested extensively against drone swarms. The Block 3 version is reportedly capable of engaging multiple targets in a single flight. Cost per unit? Estimates range from $30,000 to $60,000, which is still higher than the Shahed's price tag, but far cheaper than a Patriot or Stinger in most scenarios. More importantly, the Coyote is ground-launched, no aircraft needed, no pilot at risk. It can be fired from vehicles or fixed installations, making it far more flexible than traditional air defense. In 2023, the U.S. Army deployed Coyote-based systems to the Middle East as part of force protection upgrades at bases that had been targeted by drone attack. This wasn't publicized widely, but it happened. The Coyote showed that the U.S. could build drone-on-drone warfare, a flying weapon that hunts flying weapons. But as effective as the Coyote is, it still has a ceiling. A swarm of 50 Shaheds would exhaust a Coyote battery fast. The reload time isn't instant. The math still isn't perfectly solved. Which brings us to the third solution, and the one that is generating the most buzz inside the defense community right now. Segment 4, the third solution, Roadrunner. If the APKWS is a smart upgrade of an old weapon, and the Coyote is a specialized drone hunter, then the Roadrunner is something else entirely. Built by Joby-affiliated startup Joby, actually developed by Anduril Industries, the Roadrunner is a reusable, autonomous drone interceptor. That's right, reusable. It launches vertically, like a rocket. It flies at high speed toward an incoming threat. It destroys it. Then, if it didn't need to self-destruct, it turns around and lands back at its launch site. Land, refuel, fly again. This is a game changer for the cost equation. Traditional interceptors are single-use. Every Patriot missile that fires is gone forever. Every Coyote that kills a target is expended. But the Roadrunner can be used over and over, which dramatically lowers the per engagement cost over time. Anduril publicly demonstrated the Roadrunner M, the expendable version, in 2023. The autonomous version, which returns and lands, is reportedly in advanced testing as of 2024 and 2025. The Roadrunner is designed to work in swarms itself, multiple units launching simultaneously, coordinating autonomously, covering a wide airspace without human operators managing each one. Think about what that means for a military base under drone attack. Instead of one operator frantically firing interceptors, you have a swarm of Roadrunners taking off automatically, hunting and killing incoming threat, then landing and waiting for the next wave. This is where U.S. drone defense is heading, and the fact that Anduril, a relatively young defense company, built this says a lot about how urgently Washington is treating the threat. Segment 5, the Pentagon's real concern scale. Now here is where the conversation gets serious, because the Pentagon isn't just worried about 100 Shaheds, they're worried about 1,000. Chinese military planners have studied Iran's drone strategy closely. If a conflict were to break out in the Pacific, analysts estimate China could deploy tens of thousands of cheap drones simultaneously against U.S. carrier groups, airfields, and logistics hubs across the region. A carrier strike group carries a finite number of interceptors. If those are exhausted in the first wave, the second and third waves arrive almost unopposed. This is the scenario that keeps military planners up at night. And it's why the U.S. isn't just investing in better interceptors, it's investing in a fundamentally different philosophy of defense. The old model was, build one very expensive thing that can stop any threat. The new model is build many cheap things that can overwhelm the threat through numbers. The Roadrunner, the Coyote, the APKWS, all three represent this shift, and the U.S. is not stopping there. In 2024, the Department of Defense launched the Replicator initiative, a program specifically designed to field thousands of small autonomous systems within 18 to 24 months. The goal is to counter China's mass production drone advantage, not by building better weapons, but by building more of them. This is a strategic pivot that hasn't gotten nearly enough attention from the mainstream press. But for anyone who follows military affairs closely, it is one of the most significant shifts in U.S. defense policy in decades. Segment 6, the cost math, laid out clearly. Let's do the math cleanly, because this is the heart of the whole issue. Iran's Shahed-136, approximately $20,000 per unit. A Patriot missile interceptor, approximately $3 million per shot. That ratio, 150 to 1, means Iran can exhaust U.S. defenses at a tiny fraction of the cost. Now compare that to the new solutions. APKWS rocket, approximately $10,000. Ratio flips, U.S. spends half of what Iran spends per kill. Coyote Interceptor, approximately $50,000. Ratio is roughly 2.5 to 1. Still not perfect, but manageable. Roadrunner, reusable variant, unit cost is classified, but if it completes 10 to 20 intercepts before major maintenance, the effective per engagement cost drops below $20,000, potentially matching or beating the Shahed's own cost. This is the math the Pentagon is racing to solve, and these three systems represent real, measurable progress. Not perfect, not complete. But for the first time since the Shahed started dominating headlines, the U.S. has weapons in the field that don't require a billionaire's budget to shoot down a plywood drone. Segment 7, which system actually scales? So here is the big question the defense community is debating. Which one of these systems actually works at scale? The APKWS requires aircraft. In a high-intensity conflict where air superiority is contested, like a Pacific War scenario, you can't always guarantee a helicopter overhead to fire the rocket. Effective? Yes. Scalable everywhere? No. The Coyote is ground-based, which is a major advantage, but its reload time and magazine capacity limit how many drones it can engage in a short window. In a true mass drone attack, a Coyote battery could be overwhelmed. The Roadrunner has the most potential for true scalability precisely because of that reusability factor. A single Roadrunner unit that can be used 20 times costs far less per engagement than any single-use interceptor. Combine that with autonomous swarming capability, and you start to have a system that can match the scale of the threat. But, and this is important, the Roadrunner is still in development. It hasn't been battle-tested at scale. The Coyote has real-world deployments behind it. The APKWS has a proven track record. The honest answer is, the U.S. doesn't rely on one system. The plan is layered defense. The PKWS handles the outer ring with aircraft. Coyotes defend fixed positions and bases. Roadrunners, once fully fielded, provide the autonomous, scalable, rapid response layer. 3 systems, 3 layers, 1 answer. And that layered approach is exactly how the U.S. military has always solved its hardest problem. Not with one silver bullet, but with overlapping capabilities that cover each other's gaps. Segment 8. What comes next? The Replicator initiative, officially announced by Deputy Secretary of Defense Kathleen Hicks in 2023, set a target of fielding multiple thousands of autonomous systems by August 2025. That deadline is here. Whether it was fully met remains partially classified, but defense contractors and congressional testimony through 2024 confirmed that significant numbers of small autonomous systems were already being delivered to various branches of the military. The U.S. Marine Corps has been particularly aggressive in integrating drone defense into its operations. Marine units in the Pacific are now training regularly with counter-drone systems as a core part of their combat package, not an add-on, but a foundational skill. The U.S. Army has deployed counter-drone systems to multiple bases in Iraq and Syria, following a series of drone attacks in 2023 and 2024 that wounded American service members. And the U.S. Navy, perhaps most vulnerable to the Shahed-style threat given the cost of its ships, is investing heavily in directed energy weapons, railguns, and low-cost interceptors to give its carrier groups a fighting chance against drone swarm. The response is real, it is funded, it is deployed, and it is only getting more capable with each passing year. Conclusion: here is the bottom line. Iran built a $20,000 drone that changed the rules of modern warfare. Russia proved those rules applied globally by firing thousands of them into Ukraine. And the US military, for a moment, found itself fighting a new kind of war with old kind weapons. But America does not lose that kind of fight. It adapts. The APKWS, the Coyote, the Roadrunner, the Replicator initiative. These aren't just weapons. They are proof that the US military is taking the drone threat seriously and building answers that are smarter, cheaper, and faster than anything that came before. The question isn't whether America can solve this problem. The question is whether the solutions will be ready before the next major conflict makes them necessary. And based on everything you just heard, they're closer than anyone realizes. If this video gave you something to think about, hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss what we cover next. The stories that matter most are often the ones getting the least attention, and this channel exists to change that.